I have a lot of employees that have been with us a long time, so they, learned from the old team.
Well,
right?
so this is a good segue into circling back into hiring and people and stuff. How you're not the only attorney that I've talked to that's trying to get the firm out of the Stone Ages into the New Ages, and that's got to be really tough. So how do you deal with that, and how do you get in the right people into the firm and then melding with the old people without having them have the bad habits?
Well, I think one of the most difficult things is realizing when you have to say goodbye, and actually say goodbye to a really important key old school player. So my office manager until 2013, not that I remember September 7th, 2013.
That's stuck. It's imprinted. Where's it tattooed on you?
She, at that point, was with the firm almost 30 years.
Whoa.
And she actually taught me a lot, and she was phenomenal, wonderful person, cared so deeply. But I'd come back from an event and be like, okay, we're going to go do this. And I would get, absolutely. And then she'd turn around and do whatever the hell she wanted to do. And it took a while for me to, realize that's what was holding me back. I was like, why isn't this working? And trying all this stuff.
Why do you think she was like that? Why do you think sounds like she was like a cheerleader, but then not do it?
I think it's, partly, I know more than he does. I don't like that. Afraid of change. Yeah. And I think the afraid of change piece is the tough part for those folks that have been with you a long time. Some people are built to change and modify, and other people, they'll change a little bit, but then snap back to the way they were doing things.
Have you watched or listened to my recent episode about toxic employees?
No, but that is on the list.
Because by the way, the YouTube commenters don't like it. Becca asked me if I wanted to delete them. I'm like, no, I like it. Let's keep them on there. But I think it's typically employees that are probably commenting. Yeah. But I was wondering if this particular employee has the traits that I talk about. So I am curious would you go listen to it if it sounds familiar to you at all. Okay. Did she ever tell you how great she was?
She wasn't quite like that. Sometimes there was some that I have gotten that from some people.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of the DISC assessments in the office.
You love DISC, yeah.
And we trend a certain way, and we pull our hair out going, what is it? How are we even attracting people like this? Like, we're just putting a freaking ad out there. How are we, is it the nature of what we do as a business? Maybe it is. So we're now kind of, we have a potential hire now. And I said to Kathy, I said, we like this one person that works for us. They have their own issues, but we like this stuff about them. Let's compare that person to this new person's DISC, because if it's close enough, then we're going to get somebody more like him as opposed to somebody like this other person.
Yeah. We do that other assessment. I can't think of the name of it.
The Minnesota, I don't know.
Whatever the other one is. It's funny. Jim and I have talked about it forever. I always forget it. I always have to ask Amy what it is, but we use it. And I was looking at all the common trends. And it was funny because we were talking about like what you're attracting. We had not been analyzing it from like, okay, like what do they have in common? Like for these different positions, we just hadn't been doing that. Like when it comes to like the numbers, but then I went and looked at it, I was like, wow, these are all matching up. All the ones that were good hires were in this category. All the ones that were bad hires were in this category. It was like, wow. So you really can break it down and like, oh wow, this will work for us or this won't work for us.
Yeah. One thing we're trying now is we've made some job scorecards and we're actually building some assessments of what we think is the right employee for that job role. And then we're going to take the potential new hires DISC and compare it to that one.
Yeah, I like that idea.
And the other thing is to use them to compare, like, okay, even if this person is whatever, C and an S, they're going to be working with this person. Let's see how they actually interact, what the interaction is going to be like, because we need them working with this person.
Do you use the job scorecards in the interview process?
We try to.
Yeah. Like usually when we do bring it up, when we talk about it, the candidates seem to like it because they know what their expectations are.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that part's really helpful. You also know, like, okay, like what do we want this person to do? Like, and you actually think it through.
Well, that's the thing is you can't just say, oh, well, we know what they're going to do. Oh, we know what well, no, you don't. I always have this fight with a friend of mine where he always complains about this one employee who comes in late. And I'm like, have you told them they need to be here? They should know.
Then you can't complain about
I
it.
said, well, they should know, but they don't. So why don't you tell them? Right? If you spell out, and this is a stress reliever, right? Now when a person's giving you a hard time or you're having a hard time with the person, you can say, let's sit down. These are the 5 things you agreed to. You're killing it on numbers 1, 3, and 4. Mm-hmm. What's going on with 2 and 5?
Absolutely.
And it makes the process of trying to help them improve, if you do want to keep them on, so much better. It's like, okay, around this thing, what's the one thing we're going to do this month to work on this thing? Yeah.
I mean, there's a ton of benefits to it. And it's especially true with like, and this probably doesn't apply to you with your firm, but if someone is coming in late, it might be because I'll call it the old regime, where maybe there was other leadership in the firm that's like they were okay with you coming in at 9 o'clock when your expectations are 8:30, and so they may not know.
Yeah, and it's also behavior, right? Our behavior, what we tolerate and don't tolerate. You hear people say, "Oh, if you tolerate the crap, then the A players get upset." And forgetting the labels, if you're tolerating certain things, all the other kids know it.
Right.
Period. I have 4 kids. They can play my wife and I like a fiddle.
Yes.
Right. And so can your employees. Right. They just know. They see what's going on.
When it comes to like changing gears from kind of like the old guard to the new guard, and where you made that switch where you kind of got your financial house in order and all that, was there some triggering factor that said, we've got to do this now? Like, was there some big event that happened that made you make that decision?
So I brought my leadership team to Denver, Colorado in 2018 for a Scaling Up Summit. Vern Harnish's Scaling Up.
You and I both love Scaling Up.
Love Scaling Up. It's the one I picked. I'll just say that there's so many methods and systems out there. Just pick one and go deep.
Yep.
And prior to that, we rented a workspace, and they had these great big glass whiteboard walls. And we had a phenomenal year the year prior, and we were drowning in 2018. And we sat down and we worked with our business coach and tried to really map out what the hell was going on. Who should we let go? Who should we keep? What are we really doing? What are the numbers we're trying to look at? My friend Mike had just now begun getting involved with us in more of this stuff. And I remember mapping this all out, and we came back and we made some tough decisions, and some tough decisions were made for us, and we turned things around. And that was really the pivot point, because it was the team together. It was the first time that my leadership team together, and there were 5 of us, had really made some decisions, talked it out like adults.
Yeah.
And then we followed it up with the summit for the Scaling Up, which kind of just tied stuff together, and it's like really cool. And that was really the pivot point that I can think back on, because that leadership team is still there, and they have grown and matured so much since that time. In fact, one of the individuals had said to me, she goes, "Remember, the wall?" He said, "I know we made certain decisions, and I'm fine with it, but boy, what if we had done that?"
Wow.
And I said to her, I said, "Well, you don't boast often, but you're 100% right."
Yeah.
That was a very interesting what if.
The wall.
There are a lot of walls in my life.
But that is interesting though. Like, but it was definitely impact. She had an impact on her. Have you ever heard me talking about? I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast about how Amy and I went through this exercise where we said, if we were going to reduce the firm down to this number, like who would we pick? Have I talked about that?
No, I don't recall you.
It was a very interesting exercise where we were in a position where we had to lay people off, but it was just an interesting thought exercise that I wanted to go through, where I said, okay, let's say that we wanted, because I wanted to say, okay, I think what started this is I wanted to increase our profit percentage is what was wanting to do. And I was trying to figure out what are ways we can do it. And then I was like, well, what if we did this exercise? So we actually did it at a date night where I was like,
wow,
okay.
you're a hot date.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I said, well, what if we picked, and I don't remember the number, but it was almost like a draft where I said, I'll go first, or actually I said, you can go first. And then so we went back and forth. And we set the number and we went back and forth and we saw what was left over. And we're like, oh, interesting. Yeah, it was very insightful.
So I like the language you just used, because one of my favorite little things to use, and we don't use it enough, is basically a salary cap. We create a little salary cap model.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Right? So, hey, look, here's the max. Here's, and the way we did it was like, hey, here's the max revenue, and here's the expenses, and here's this. And what's left over is salary.
Yeah.
And it's very helpful, because I would challenge you not just to do it on the negative side.